If you believe trust is everything in a relationship, then this story might change the way you see people forever, because sometimes the biggest betrayals don't come with loud arguments. They come with silence. This is the story of Daniel Brooks, a single dad, a man who already lost everything once and never thought he'd have to go through it again. 3 years ago, Daniel buried his wife. Not just the love of his life, but the future he had planned. The dreams, the laughter, the life they were building together, and just like that, it was gone. But Daniel didn't have the luxury of falling apart because there was someone else depending on him, his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. She was the only light left in his world, the only reason he woke up every morning, the only reason he kept going, even when everything inside him felt broken. Every day, his life followed the same routine. Wake up early. Make breakfast. Pack Lily's lunch. Drop her off at school. Work long hours. Come home. Help with homework. Read bedtime stories. And then sit alone in silence. That was his life. No parties. No dating. No second chances. Love was something he had locked away. Until Emma walked into his life. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't love at first sight. It was simple. They met at a coffee shop. Lily had accidentally spilled juice on the floor, and while Daniel rushed to clean it up, Emma stepped in to help without hesitation. She smiled. She joked with Lily. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt something different, something warm. At first, he kept his distance. He wasn't ready. He told himself that. But Emma was patient. She didn't push. She didn't rush him. She just stayed. Slowly, she became part of their lives. She would come over for dinner. Help Lily with homework, watch movies with them on the couch. And Lily, she adored her. Is Emma coming today? Lily would ask almost every day. And every time Daniel heard that, his heart softened just a little more, because it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about giving Lily something she had lost, a sense of family. And for a while, everything felt perfect. Too perfect. Emma was caring. Attentive. Understanding. She knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make Daniel feel seen again. And that's what scared him the most, because Daniel had learned something the hard way. When something feels perfect, you should look closer. But he ignored that feeling. Because for the first time in years, he was happy. Real happy. Not the kind where you pretend everything is okay, but the kind where you actually believe it. Months passed, and just when Daniel started to let his guard down completely, something changed. At first, it was small. So small that most people wouldn't even notice. Emma started checking her phone more often. Late night messages. Quick replies, smiling at her screen, then locking it the moment Daniel walked in. Work stuff, she would say casually. And Daniel? He didn't question it, because trust means not questioning everything, right? But then, the work stuff started happening more often. Late nights, sudden meetings. Last-minute cancellations. Plans they made together suddenly didn't matter anymore. And the woman who once couldn't wait to spend time with them now always seemed busy. Too busy. One night, Daniel noticed something different. Emma was sitting next to him, but she wasn't really there. Her attention was somewhere else. Her smile didn't feel real. Her responses, "Lade, everything okay?" Daniel asked calmly. Emma looked up quickly, almost startled. "Yeah, of course," she said, forcing a smile. But Daniel didn't respond. He just nodded. Because he had seen that look before. Not in Emma, but in people who were hiding something. And suddenly, that quiet voice in his head came back. The one he had ignored for months. Something isn't right. But Daniel wasn't the type to argue. He wasn't the type to accuse. Life had already taught him. Truth doesn't need to be forced. It reveals. itself. So instead of confronting her, he started watching. Not in an obsessive way, not in a controlling way. Just paying attention. And what he noticed only made things worse. Emma started stepping outside to take calls. She would lower her voice, sometimes even walk away completely, and when she came back, she acted like nothing happened. But Daniel noticed everything. The tone shifts, the hesitation, the small inconsistencies, and the biggest one of all, she stopped looking at him the same way. The warmth was fading, the connection weakening. And deep down, Daniel already knew why, but knowing and accepting are two different things. One evening, everything reached a turning point. Emma stood near the door, grabbing her bag. "I have to stay late tonight," she said quickly. "Big project. Deadline." Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her. And for a split second, he saw something in her eyes. Not stress, not exhaustion. Something else. Guilt. But just as quickly as it appeared, it disappeared, replaced by that same practiced smile. "Don't wait up," she added. Daniel nodded slowly. "All right," he said calmly. "No questions. No arguments. Nothing. And that's what surprised her the most, because she was expecting something. Suspicion. Doubt. Maybe even confrontation. But Daniel gave her none of that. He simply stepped aside and let her leave. The door closed, and just like that, the house went silent again. Daniel stood there for a moment. Not moving, not reacting. Just thinking. Then he walked to Lily's room. She was already asleep. Peaceful. Safe. Unaffected by the storm that was slowly building. Daniel sat beside her, gently brushing her hair away from her face, and in that moment, everything became clear. This wasn't just about him anymore. Whatever Emma was hiding, whatever truth was waiting outside that door, it had the power to affect his daughter too, and that he couldn't allow. Daniel stood up slowly, walked back into the living room, picked up his keys. His phone. And his jacket. There was no anger in his movements. No panic. No rush. Just decision. Because tonight, he wasn't going to guess anymore. He wasn't going to ignore the signs. He wasn't going to pretend everything was okay. Tonight, Daniel Brooks was going to find the truth. Not for revenge. Not for confrontation, but for closure. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing isn't being lied to, it's knowing the truth and choosing not to see it. Daniel opened the door, stepped outside into the night, and quietly closed it behind him. What he was about to discover would change everything. And the craziest part? He already had a feeling this wasn't going to end with anger. It was going to end with something far more powerful. Silence. If you've ever trusted someone and felt something wasn't right, make sure you stay till the end. Because in the next chapter, Daniel doesn't just follow her, he catches her. And what he does next, no one expects. Make sure you like this video. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Because this story, it's just getting started. If you thought Chapter 1 was intense, then what you're about to hear next will change everything. Because this is the moment where doubt turns into truth, and trust me, the truth doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes in complete silence. Daniel stepped outside into the cool night air, closing the door quietly behind him. The street was calm, too. Calm. The kind of silence that makes your thoughts louder than usual. He stood there for a second, gripping his car keys, staring at nothing in particular. This was it. The moment where everything could either prove him wrong or confirm what he already felt deep inside. And strangely, he wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. He was focused. Because Daniel wasn't chasing Emma out of jealousy. He wasn't trying to catch her in a lie just to start a fight. No. He needed clarity for himself, for his peace, and most importantly, for Lily. He got into his car, started the engine, and pulled out slowly, not rushing, not panicking. Just following. A few minutes later, he spotted Emma's car ahead of him, the red taillights glowing faintly in the distance. Daniel kept his distance. Far enough to not be noticed, but close enough to not lose her. City lights reflected across his windshield as he drove. Shops passing by. Streetlights flickering. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. Because with every turn Emma took, Daniel realized something. She wasn't heading anywhere near her office. Not even close. And that quiet feeling in his chest? It got heavier, but still. No reaction. No sudden anger. Just observation. Emma finally turned into a quiet apartment complex on the far side of town, a place Daniel had never seen before. It wasn't busy. It wasn't loud. Just a dimly lit parking lot and rows of buildings that looked almost identical. Emma parked. Daniel slowed down, driving past before making a careful turn and parking under a streetlight. From where he sat, he had a clear view, and then he saw it. Emma stepped out of her car. She looked around briefly, not nervously, but habitually, like someone who had done this before, and that detail, that one small detail, said more than anything else. Daniel leaned back slightly in his seat. His face calm, eyes steady. Watching. Waiting. Then suddenly the apartment door opened. Before Emma even reached it. A man stood there, already waiting, and the moment their eyes met, they smiled. Not a polite smile, not a casual one. No. This was something else, something familiar. Something comfortable. And just like that, everything Daniel needed to know was right in front of him. Emma walked up to him, and without hesitation, she stepped inside. The door closed behind them. And the world outside went completely still. Daniel didn't move, didn't react, didn't even blink for a few seconds, because this was the moment most people would break. Shout. Cry. Lose control. But Daniel? He did something different. He exhaled slowly. That's it. Just a quiet breath, because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. All those late nights, the secret calls, the distant behavior. It all made sense now. And strangely, that brought him peace. Because uncertainty is always heavier than truth. No matter how painful. That truth is. Daniel reached for his phone. Not to call her, not to text her, but to take a picture through the windshield. The apartment door. The moment. Not for revenge. Not to expose her, but for himself. Proof. Closure. He placed the phone back down. And sat there, quietly. Thinking. Not about Emma. But about Lily, her smile, her innocence, her trust. And in that moment, Daniel made a decision. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about protecting what truly mattered, because someone who could lie this easily could hurt them both even more later, and that he would never allow. A few minutes passed, but Daniel didn't wait any longer. He opened the car door, stepped out, closed it gently. And began walking toward the apartment. Each step steady. Controlled. No hesitation. No anger. Just purpose. The closer he got, the quieter everything felt, like the world itself was holding its breath. He reached the door, paused for a moment. Not to think, but to finalize his decision. This wasn't about creating a scene. This wasn't about fighting. This was about ending something that was already broken. Daniel lifted his hand and knocked. Once. Firm. Clear. Inside, Everything went silent. No movement. No voices. Just stillness. Then soft footsteps. Getting closer. And then the door opened. Emma stood there. And the moment she saw him, everything changed. Her face went pale. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted. But no words came out. Behind her, the man stood frozen. Confused. Uncomfortable. But Daniel? He didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed on Emma. Calm. Unshaken. And that was the part she wasn't ready for. Because she expected anger. She expected yelling. She expected chaos. But what she got instead was silence. And that silence, it hit harder than anything else. Daniel. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. And for the first time, she looked scared, not of him, but of what his calmness meant, because deep down, she realized something. This wasn't a man who came to argue. This was a man who already knew, and in that moment, Emma understood. She wasn't about to explain her way out of this. She had already lost, and Daniel? He hadn't even raised his voice. If you think this moment was powerful, just wait until what happens next, because in Chapter 3, Daniel says just 2 words. And those 2 words? They completely break her. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because this story, it's only getting more intense. If you think anger is the strongest reaction, then you've never seen a man who has nothing left to prove, because what Daniel does next is something most people don't have the strength to do. No shouting. No insults. No chaos. Just 2 words that completely destroy everything. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her heart racing, her mind scrambling. Daniel. I can explain, she said, her voice shaking. But Daniel didn't move, didn't react, didn't even blink. He simply looked at her. Calm. Steady. Unreadable. And that silence? It was suffocating, because Emma expected something else. She expected anger. She expected confrontation. She expected him to explode. But this was worse. Much worse. Because when someone doesn't react, it means they've already accepted the truth, and there's nothing left to fight for. No need. Daniel said quietly. 2 words. That was it. But the weight behind them? It hit harder than anything Emma could have imagined. Her lips trembled. Her eyes filled with panic. No. Please, it's not what you think, she rushed to say. It's exactly what I think. Daniel replied calmly. Still no anger. No raised voice. Just truth. And that truth? It shattered her, because Daniel wasn't guessing. He wasn't asking questions. He wasn't giving her a chance to twist the story. He already knew, behind her. The man shifted awkwardly. Look, man. I didn't know, he started. Daniel raised his hand, slightly, not aggressively, not threatening, just enough to stop him. This isn't your problem. Daniel said without even looking at him. It's already handled. Handled. That word echoed in the room, because it didn't sound like someone who came to fight. It sounded like someone who came to finish something. Emma stepped forward, desperation taking over. Daniel, please. Listen to me. It just happened. It didn't mean anything, she said, tears forming. But Daniel didn't step back, didn't step forward. He stayed exactly where he was, unmoved. That's the problem, he said calmly. It meant nothing to you. Emma froze. Because she didn't expect that response. She expected blame. Accusation. Pain. But what she got instead was clarity, and clarity, it leaves no room for excuses. I gave you access to my life, Daniel continued, to my home, to my daughter. His voice remained steady. Controlled. But every word carried weight, and you treated it like it was temporary. Emma shook her head quickly. No, Daniel, that's not true. I care about you. I care about Lily. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes, not anger, not sadness, just disappointment. You don't lie to people you care about, he said. Silence filled the space. Again, heavy, unavoidable, Emma single quotes, as tears started falling now. Real tears. Not the kind used to fix a situation, but the kind that come when you realize it's already too late. I made a mistake, she whispered. Daniel nodded slightly. I know. That answer confused her, because he wasn't denying it. He wasn't arguing. He was agreeing. Double Q, yes. You did, he continued, but mistakes don't happen this easily. Emma's breathing became uneven. Her words weaker. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean for this to happen. Daniel tilted his head slightly, and yet, here we are. No sarcasm, no emotion, just fact. And facts are hard to fight. Emma reached for him, but Daniel took a small step back. Not dramatically, just enough, and that small movement, it said everything. There was distance now. Line had been drawn, and she wasn't allowed to cross it anymore. I'm not here to argue, Daniel said. I'm not here to hear explanations. Emma's voice cracked again. Then why are you here? Daniel paused for a second, then answered simply, to end it. 4 words, clear, final, and just like that, Emma's world collapsed. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, Daniel, please. We can fix this. I'll change. I promise. But Daniel didn't respond immediately, because he had heard promises before, not from her, but from life, and life had taught him something important. Promises mean nothing without actions. And actions? She had already shown hers. You don't fix something by pretending it didn't happen, he said calmly. Emma stepped closer again, her voice desperate now. I'll do anything. Just don't walk away. Not like this. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, and then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small object, and placed it on the table near the palms. Out a small object, and placed it on the table near the palms. Door. The house key. The one Emma used to come and go freely. The one that symbolized trust. Access. Belonging. Now? It meant nothing. I think this belongs here now, Daniel said. Emma stared at it, then back at him, realizing what it meant. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a pause. This was the end. You're really leaving? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded once. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. Just certainty. Emma broke down completely now, tears falling uncontrollably. Daniel, please? Don't do this. We had something real. Daniel took a deep breath, then spoke one final time. We did, he said. Past tense. That one word was the final blow, because it meant everything they had was already gone, not because of him, but because of her choices. Daniel turned around slowly and started walking away. No dramatic exit. No slam doors. No final speech. Just quiet steps. Each one taking him further away from the chaos. Further away from the betrayal, and closer to peace. Behind him, Emma's voice echoed, calling his name. Begging. Crying. But Daniel didn't stop, didn't turn around, because sometimes looking back is what keeps you stuck. And Daniel? He was done being stuck. He walked out of the building. Back into the cool night air. And for the first time that night, he felt something unexpected. Relief. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it was over. No more guessing. No more doubts. No more lies. Just truth. And sometimes the truth is painful, but it's also freeing. Daniel got into his car, set There for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, letting everything settle. Then he started the engine and drove away. Not fast, not rushed, just forward, because that's the only direction that matters. And Emma? She stood there in that doorway. Alone. Realizing something she would never forget. The man she thought would fight for her was the same man strong enough to walk away without a fight. And that calm reaction, it didn't just end the relationship. It changed everything. If you think this chapter hit hard, just wait until chapter 4, because that's where Daniel makes the most important decision of all, not for himself, but for his daughter. Make sure you like the video, drop a comment telling me your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, because this story, it's about to get even deeper. Some people think the hardest part is catching someone you love doing something wrong, but they're wrong. The hardest part is what comes after, because pain, that's temporary, but the choices you make after pain, they define who you really are. Daniel drove through the quiet streets, the city lights fading behind him. Everything felt slower, now quieter. Like the world had lost its noise. His hands rested calmly on the steering wheel. His eyes focused on the road ahead. No speeding. No sudden turns, just steady movement, because for Daniel, this wasn't the end of control. It was the beginning of it. Most people would have been overwhelmed by now. Anger, frustration, sadness. But Daniel, he had already lived through worse. He had already faced loss in its purest form. And compared to that, this was just clarity. Not easy, but necessary. As he pulled into his driveway, the house stood there in silence. The same house that once felt full again, now felt different. Not empty. Just real. Daniel stepped out of the car and paused for a moment, looking at the front door. Because behind that door was the only thing that truly mattered. Lily. He walked inside quietly, placed his keys on the table, and instinctively glanced around. Emma's presence was still there. Her coffee mug, a jacket on the chair, small traces of someone who no longer belonged. Daniel didn't react, didn't throw anything away, didn't rush to erase her, because healing doesn't come from pretending something never existed. It comes from accepting that it's over. He walked down the hallway and gently opened Lily's door. She was still asleep. Peaceful. Unaware. Safe. And in that moment, everything became simple again. Daniel sat beside her bed, watching her breathe, listening to the soft rhythm of her sleep. And for the first time that night, his guard dropped slightly, not completely, but enough to feel something deeper. Responsibility. Not just as a father, but as a protector, because tonight wasn't just about betrayal. It was about boundaries. About understanding that not everyone deserves access to your life, and more importantly, not everyone deserves access to your child. Daniel leaned back slightly in the chair, his voice barely a whisper. I got this. Not to anyone else. Just to himself. A quiet promise, the kind that doesn't need witnesses, because it's real. Next morning came like any other. Sunlight through the window, the sound of birds outside. New day, but something had changed. Not the routine, but the mindset. Daniel woke up early. As usual. Made breakfast, poured juice, packed Lily's lunch. Every movement calm. Every action intentional. No signs of chaos. No signs of what had happened just hours ago. Because strength isn't about showing pain. It's about managing it. Lily walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Good morning, Daddy, she said softly. Daniel smiled. Good morning, Princess. She climbed onto her chair and looked around for a brief second. Her eyes searched for something or someone. Is Emma coming today? She asked innocently. There it was, the moment Daniel knew would come, and yet he was ready. He crouched down to her level, not rushed, not uncomfortable, just honest. No, sweetheart, he said gently. She won't be coming anymore. Lily tilted her head slightly. Why? Such a simple question, but one that carries so much weight. Daniel paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully, because this wasn't just about telling the truth. It was about protecting her innocence, because sometimes, he said softly, people make choices that show they don't belong in our story. Lily looked at him quietly, not fully understanding, but trusting him. And that trust? That meant everything. She nodded slowly. Okay. No more questions. No confusion. Just acceptance. Because when a child trusts you, they don't need explanations. They just need honesty. Later that day, Daniel's phone lit up. Emma. Calling. Once. Twice. Three times. The screen kept lighting up. Her name flashing again and again. Daniel looked at it for a moment, then placed it face down. Not angry. Not emotional. Just done. Because closure doesn't always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from silence. The phone buzzed again. A message this time. I'm sorry. Please talk to me. Another one. I didn't mean for it to happen. And another. I miss you. I miss Lily. Daniel read them, every single one, and still he didn't reply. Not because he didn't care, but I say didn't care, but because he understood something now. Responding wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't undo what happened. It wouldn't rebuild trust, and it definitely wouldn't protect his daughter. So instead of replying, he moved forward. That evening, Daniel took Lily to the park. Something he hadn't done in a while. She laughed as she ran toward the swings. Her joy effortless. Pure. Real. Daniel sat on a nearby bench, watching her. And for the first time in days, he smiled without force, because this was what mattered. Not relationships that come and go. Not people who don't value what they have, but moments like this. Simple. Peaceful. Meaningful. Lily ran back toward him, slightly out of breath. Push me higher, she said excitedly. Daniel stood up, walked over, and gently pushed the swing. Higher. And higher. Her laughter filled the air, and in that moment, Daniel realized something important. He didn't lose anything. He removed something that didn't belong, and there's a difference, a big one. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel sat alone again. Same couch. Same silence, but it felt different now. Not heavy, not suffocating, just quiet. Peaceful. He looked around the room, and slowly, he started to clean. Not aggressively, not emotionally. Just calmly. He picked up Emma's things, placed them in a small box. No anger. No resentment. Just closure. Because holding on to things only keeps you connected to what you're trying to move on from. And Daniel? He was ready to move forward, one step at a time. At his own pace. Because in the end, this chapter wasn't about betrayal. It was about choice. The choice to stay calm. The choice to walk away. The choice to protect what truly matters. And most importantly, the choice to know your worth. If this chapter made you feel something, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me what you would have done. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because in the final chapter, Emma comes back, and what Daniel does next, that's the moment that changes everything. Forever. Some endings are loud. Full of arguments, tears, and chaos. But the most powerful endings? They're quiet. They come with clarity, with acceptance, and with a strength most people never understand, because walking away without looking back. That takes everything. Weeks passed. Not days, not moments, weeks, and in those weeks, something changed inside Daniel, not overnight, not instantly, but slowly. Steadily, he became someone even stronger than before. His life settled into a new rhythm. Wake up early. Make breakfast with Lily. Drive her to school. Work. Come home. Spend time together. Simple. Peaceful. Real. There were no more late night doubts. No more unanswered questions. No more wondering if something felt off, because everything in his life now made sense. And that kind of peace? It's rare. The house felt different too. Emma's presence was gone. No forgotten items. No reminders. Just space. And instead of feeling empty, that space felt free. Like a fresh start. Daniel didn't rush into anything new. No dating. No distractions. Because he understood something important. Now healing isn't about replacing someone. It's about rebuilding yourself. And that's exactly what he was doing. One day at a time, for himself and for Lily. One afternoon, Daniel pulled up to Lily's school. Same routine. Same parking spot. Same quiet wait. Kids ran out of the building, laughing, shouting, full of energy. Parents waved. Cars started moving. Everything looked normal. Until it wasn't, because standing near the gate was Emma. Daniel noticed her immediately, but his expression didn't change. No surprise. No reaction. Just awareness. She stood there, holding her hands together nervously. Her posture different, her confidence gone. And when their eyes met, she hesitated. For a second, it looked like she might turn away, but she didn't. Instead, she walked toward him. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone approaching something fragile. Daniel, she said softly. Her voice wasn't the same. No confidence. No control. Just regret. Can we talk? Daniel looked at her. Not cold. Not warm. Just neutral. There's nothing left to talk about, he replied calmly. Simple. Direct. But not harsh. Emma swallowed hard. I know I messed up, she said quickly. I know I hurt you. But please, just give me a minute. Daniel didn't respond right away. He glanced toward the school entrance, still waiting for Lily, then back at Emma. 1 minute, he said. That was all. Emma nodded quickly, almost relieved. Like she had been given a second chance. But what she didn't realize was that this wasn't a second chance. It was closure. I made a mistake, she began, her voice shaking, a big one. And I regret it every single day. Daniel listened. Quietly. No interruptions. I didn't realize what I had, she continued. You, Lily, the life we were building. I took it for granted. Tears formed in her eyes again, but this time, Daniel didn't react to them. Because he had already seen this part, and he knew something she didn't. Regret doesn't undo actions. I miss you, she said. I miss us. Daniel nodded slightly. I understand, he replied. And he meant it. He understood regret. He understood loss. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. Emma took a small step closer. Then let's fix it, she said desperately. We can start over. I'll do better. I promise. There it was, the word people always use when things fall apart. Promise. But Daniel didn't respond the way she hoped. Instead, he shook his head gently. No, he said. One word. Soft. Calm. Froze, like she didn't hear him correctly. No? She repeated. Daniel looked at her steadily. No. This time, clearer. Stronger. Double quotes. But why? She asked, her voice breaking. I'm willing to fix everything. Daniel took a slow breath, then spoke. Because some things don't get fixed, he said. They end. Emma shook her head quickly, tears falling now. No, that's not true. People make mistakes. Yes, Daniel interrupted calmly. They do. Silence. But they also face consequences, he added. That hit her hard because deep down. She knew he was right. Daniel glanced toward the school again, still waiting, then back at her. You didn't just hurt me, he said. You risked becoming part of my daughter's life, and then showed me you couldn't be trusted. Emma's face fell completely, because now, this wasn't just about them. This was about Lily, and that made everything heavier. I would never hurt her. Emma said quickly. Daniel nodded. I believe you, he said, and that surprised her. But intention doesn't matter if the behavior is wrong, he continued. Emma had no response. Because there wasn't one. I cared about you. Daniel said, I really did. Her eyes filled with hope for a split second, but then he finished his sentence. But I care about my peace more. And just like that hope disappeared, because she realized something in that moment. She was no longer his priority, not even close. Lily finally ran out of the school building. Daddy! She shouted happily. Daniel's entire expression changed. Instantly. Warm. Soft. Present. He smiled and opened his arms as she ran toward him. He picked her up, holding her tightly, and in that moment, Emma saw the difference. The version of Daniel she lost, and the version that remained. Hi. Sweetheart, he said gently. Lily looked at Emma for a second, a bit confused, but didn't say anything. Daniel gently set her down. Come on, he said softly. Let's go home. Emma stepped forward one last time. Daniel, please. But this time, he didn't stop, didn't respond, didn't turn around. He simply took Lily's hand and started walking away. Emma stood there, watching, frozen, because she finally understood something. This wasn't a man who was angry. This wasn't a man who was hurt. This was a man who had moved on. And that's something you can't fight. As Daniel walked away, Lily looked up at him. Daddy, are you okay? She asked softly. Daniel smiled down at her. I am now, he said. And for the first time in a long time. That was completely true. Because in the end, this story was never about catching someone cheating. It was about something deeper. Self-respect. Boundaries. Strength. And understanding that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Quietly. Without revenge, without hate, just done. If this story meant something to you, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment and tell me your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this, they remind us all of one thing: know your worth and never settle for less.